You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
Greetings, everyone. Coach Jen here, and thanks for tuning in to Horse Tip Daily, episode 1604, brought to you today by Practical Horseman on Demand. This time, Mary Kitzmiller explains the meaning and purpose of yielding the shoulder.
Train with top hunter, jumper, and eventing professionals anytime, anywhere with Practical Horseman on Demand. Your membership gives you access to hundreds of how-to training videos taught by top-level hunter, jumper, equitation, and eventing pros. Exclusive interviews and lectures, slow-motion demonstrations, insider access to private clinics and lessons, and step-by-step tutorials. New content is always being rolled out, so there are always new videos available on the topics important to you. Join now for just $24.99 a month and take your training to the next level with Practical Horseman on Demand.
I really struggle with the concept of a horse giving his forehand, or because they have the give the hindquarters, right? Well, give the forehand. I understand what give the forehand might be under saddle, in that it might be considered a turn on the haunches because the hindquarters are sitting still and the front end is moving around it. But I'm having a hard time getting my head around what that looks like and what its purpose is when you're doing groundwork. Help.
That is a great question. And interestingly enough, I was teaching a lesson last night, and this is what I was working on. It's one of those maneuvers that I've come to realize is extremely important, being able to get the horse to yield the shoulder. So if I put any kind of pressure on or around the horse's front end, I want him to be able to move that body part away. And I've learned, especially with Mustangs, it's really important because a horse that's very protective of himself and very fearful often doesn't want to give you access to like the sides of their body. So when you're first working with Mustangs, I approach them from the front. And oftentimes when I want to, like, okay, now I want to rub you on the neck and the shoulder, the Mustangs are they're like, no, you can't go over there. And they will use, they'll use their head, neck, and shoulders to block you. And I see it a ton in domestic horses too, but we're just used to ignoring it. Because it's not like if you make one wrong move with the domestic horse, they're going to explode and run away. So like the horse we were working with last night, the young girl was given this horse and she was told the horse was 3. I think the horse is 10. So we both decided not to trust. I think the horse has been broke to ride, but we both decided to, like, let's do a restart just to make sure there's nothing surprising under the hood. And so she said, I tried to lunge the horse, but she just won't go in a circle. She just tosses her head at me. And so when I began helping her teach what to do to move the horse, found the horse would very much wanted to like leave her front end drilled into the ground and not give up that space. And she also would, you'll see a horse, like if you want to walk down to the horse's right side, for instance, they'll turn their head to where it's inconvenient for you to go on that side. And then they'll just like keep turning around while planting their front end, like don't go over there, don't go over there, don't go over there. And so those horses, especially, I want to really teach to yield the front end, because if I can get them to yield that body part, it seems to unlock a new layer of trust. Because the sides of the horse, you know, a Mustang often doesn't want you to get around their belly or their legs, because in the wild, if I was a predator, those are the areas I would go for to try to take that horse down. If if a mountain lion bites the horse in the belly, he could get an infection and die, because most domestic horses don't know that we have antibiotics today. So they're very protective of their belly. And of course, their legs are very important. So, they need to protect their means of escape. So a lot of horses, without people realizing it, are very protective of their front end. They don't want to yield, because if they yield their front end, that's them giving you an incredible amount of trust and vulnerability. On a practical sense, moving the front end can be very helpful on the ground. So if you've ever heard, have you ever heard of showmanship in the Western events?
Oh, yes, it's like a halter class.
Yes, it's a halter class with maneuvers, and where the halter classes tend to judge on the horse's conformation more
It
than
just
anything
stands still like a
else.
statue. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of like a dog show. Like, is this the most horsiest horse to ever horse? Um, that's what they're judging in the halter. But in showmanship, it's how do you handle your horse? And literally you're showing off your horse. Like, look what we can do on the ground. I have such command of this horse. And one of the maneuvers is a turn on the haunches. So they plant their hindquarters. In showmanship, you really want them to plant their inside hind foot to where that never leaves the ground. And then the front end moves around, so like a reining spin. And if you see the top end of showmanship, those guys fly around in that circle, and that horse just trucks it around, yielding their front end. So if you want like an idea of what that can look like on the ground, that's a really good visual if you pull up a showmanship class on YouTube. But you'll also, in your dressage, you can teach leg yielding and shoulder in and shoulder, you can teach all that on the ground first. If you look at old school classical dressage in handwork, which is just beautiful, you can teach your shoulder in, your haunches in, your leg yields all on the ground. So the first thing I do to actually get this to happen, I do a very
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I need step one because I just don't know how to get started with it.
Yes, and it is one of the hardest things to teach. I find for people who are just kind of diving into groundwork or have never taught this maneuver before, it feels real awkward, and horses often don't want to do it, so they'll do everything but, and you've got to figure out, well, now what do I do? He's moving his butt around and not his front end, and sometimes you feel like you're really having to push on your horse, and they don't like it, and they're pushing you back, and it's a whole thing. So one of the simplest ways that I can start doing it is I'll actually stand out in front of my horse. And I like to have a nice long lead rope when I do this. So I'm going to stand a few feet in front of my horse. And what I would like the horse to do is to yield his forequarters off of a feel. And this is going to make sense under saddle. I'm going to get him when I pick up that lead rope and draw his nose to the right or to the left. I want him to feel that and go, oh, I should follow that feel. Now, what's that going to be similar to when you're riding the horse? That's going to be your steering, your reins. Because when I want the horse to go left and right, what am I doing? I'm picking up one rein and I'm tipping their nose that way and saying, follow that feel. And ideally, I'd like to just give that tiny little signal, and the horse is like, yes, without having to like bop them with the whip or kick them too hard or anything like that. So I can teach that from the ground. So, the person, we have a full question on here. This is also a good thing to teach them, or a horse you haven't started riding yet. So I like to have a pretty long lead rope, at least 10 feet long. I usually will use a flag or a whip or the end of my lead rope that's going to help drive the front end away. But the first cue I'm going to give is I'm going to pick up the lead rope and I'm literally going to point where I want my horse to go. So the horse is facing me, I'm facing the horse. I pick up the halter and let's say I point to the left. And not only will he have that visual cue of me pointing where I want him to go, but he should feel that feel in the halter, of that signal going from my hand down the rope to his face. Now, most horses, when you do this, they'll just stand there looking at you like, yeah. So, or some horses may turn their nose a little bit to follow that feel, but then the energy gets stuck and it doesn't ever make it down to the feet. Ideally, what I want to happen is I want the energy to go from me, so from my hand down the rope to the halter. So the horse should then ideally turn his head, and that energy should flow from his nose to his jaw, down his neck, to his shoulders, to his front feet, which should result in the horse picking up his feet and also moving in that direction. And in order to do that, he's going to move his shoulder. So again, That usually doesn't happen first time out. They have no idea what you're asking them to do. So I point the direction I want them to go. I give them a bit to process it. Most horses will just stare at you. And if they don't go, I'm going to put some driving pressure on their front end. So I'm going to do that with whatever implement I have in my hand, whether it be a flag. A flag is my favorite thing to do it with. A flag or the end of my lead rope or a training stick or a whip. And where I'm going to put that pressure is about halfway up their neck. And why I do it there instead of on their shoulder, well, their shoulder is this kind of big, meaty muscle that's planted in the ground. So it's a less sensitive area. But if the further I go up to the horse's face, he kind of sees that implement and he's like, oh, I want to get away from that. That's weird. It's going up toward a more sensitive part of his body. So I like the flag because I can just like flap the flag a little and he's like, okay, bye. I'm getting away from that. Um, or again, I can twirl the lead rope, and if he doesn't move, I can lightly tap him on the neck with the lead rope. Or with the stick, I can do what's called tapping the air. So I just kind of wave the stick in the air with rhythm, tap, tap, tap the air. And if he doesn't listen, then I can lightly tap him, and then I can increase pressure very incrementally until I see his feet move. So all I want to see happen is for him to pick up his feet and move his shoulder to the left because that's where I'm asking him to go. Some horses will swing the shoulder away and go forward. That's fine. I let him walk forward a little bit and then I shut him down. And then I switch hands and do it the other way. So it's like I'm opening a door. So when I switch hands, now I'm going to point to the right. And it's like I'm pointing, it's like I'm holding open a door to that horse's, to my right side. And I'm telling the horse, go through that door. And then I'm using whatever's in my left hand to push the horse through that door in essence. As soon as he,
that's working for my brain now. That's making more sense. So when you do this, because I had a vision as you're describing this of the process of changing direction when you're lunging or around penning your horse. You have them stop, they face you either 3/4 or full on, and my body language shifts my driving energy over towards the opposite shoulder so that he changes its direction. But that's where I was mentally getting stuck is I just had that vision of the horses moving away from me, but he keeps going. And when in fact, all we want him to do is pivot left and pivot right and pivot left and pivot right rather than change direction. So I'm going to have to change what I have. I'm going to have to change the movie that I have going in my head. Because
now,
the
if
movie
he
going in
walks
my head was
forward,
what controls my body.
yeah, if he walks forward a few steps after the turn, I allow it. The reason I allow it is because in my mind, I've held open a door and I shoved my horse through the door. And so if he wants to follow the turn of his shoulders and walk freely and calmly ahead, I want to just leave him alone for a bit because I want him to feel that relief of I went through the door. Well, now
We
some
don't want him to
horses
feel like he's walking into a closet and getting stuck. Yeah.
yeah. So like if he takes quote unquote too many steps, I don't want to be like, stop that. I only asked for one step. Because now he's like, well, that wasn't fun at all. I'm not doing that again. Now if some horses will stand real statue still and then maybe I use a little too much pressure and they go, ah, and they run through the door. If that happens, I'm like, no, 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 no. Slow down. I will gently shut them down by yielding the hindquarters. And then I take a little break and maybe I'll pet that horse on the face and say, you did it. You were a little fast, but you did it. And I'm really proud of you. Take a little break. Okay, now let's switch sides. So you're going to really have to tailor the amount of pressure you're using to make sure, because I'd like this to be calm, especially you have a horse that needs to, you obviously don't want to run him around in tons of little circles. So I would like this to be a very calm, clean maneuver. And the horse last night, I used a tiny bit of pressure in the beginning because I was using a flag that had a plastic bag on it. So I know the power of that plastic bag. So I used a tiny bit of pressure to start. And then once she got the idea, I thought, okay, the bag's not really bothering you. I would like you to do it with a little more gumption, like swing your shoulders away. And so I added a little more pressure. So you'll figure out by how the horse is reacting and by exactly what you want to happen in the maneuver, how to get the horse, how much pressure to use with the horse. Um, and this is a really useful exercise for many different reasons, but I like to teach this before I teach a horse to lunge. The reason why is one of the most dangerous things that can happen on a lunge line is a horse that is too close to you, that's running over your toes every time he goes around in a circle. Because if that horse is having fun and he kicks out or whatever, I'm collateral damage. I still have a scar on my left arm for where I was teaching a horse to lunge, and I was actually doing it to try to get him in a trailer, and I was giving a demonstration. This was 20 years ago, and I didn't realize how close that horse was to me, and he decided, I'm gonna kick real hard, and he kicked and got me in the chest and the arm and actually split my arm open. I've never had that happen before. So after that I learned the importance of getting distance on that lunge line, and how you get distance is by controlling that shoulder. So I teach this exercise as a start to lunging, because if my horse is facing me and I'm getting ready to teach him to lunge and I say, go forward, but he's facing me, he's going to come toward me. So what do I need to do before I say go forward? I need to say, get your shoulder way over there and get his nose pointing way in the direction I want him to go. So now if he goes forward, he's 15, 20 feet away from me.
Oh, this is good stuff to work on. Good stuff.
Yes. And if you watch a really good example, so I gave you like showmanship class to see one way to teach the shoulder. But the other thing that you'll see, like if you watch Buck Brannaman do flag work with a horse, you'll see beautiful examples of that when he's not really lunging his horses, but it's all the same thing. He's moving them around on a circle, and you'll see a really good example of both controlling the shoulders and the hindquarters and even the rib cage as the horse goes around. But you'll see him do exactly what I'm describing of, I'm going to point and say, go this way, get that horse to follow a feel, and then use my flag as backup. So that is one of many things you can do with the shoulder.
Well, there you have it. Horse Radio Network has thousands of engaging podcasts for horse people, and you can have them sent right to your phone. Just subscribe via your favorite podcast player. This is Coach Jen, and I will be back again soon with another tip. Until then, go ride your horse. The Horse Radio Network and the Horse Radio Network hosts are not responsible for statements made by guests on the Horse Tip Daily. Please use your own judgment when listening to the tips on this show.